I find marital cases the hardest to do. I think that if you're working with police officers, they're the most important because in our practice, called the stress of police work, what have you, but I think we're up to 2/3 of what we do is marital work because marriages are in trouble. And then years ago, validating my dislike and discomfort with marital work, Consumer Reports comes out with an article, and what could be better than Consumer Reports, right? Where they do one of their interviews, 4,000 people questioned, and 97% said that when they went to individual counseling, whether they're cured or not, they found it useful. They liked that experience. Whereas 62% found marital counseling useful, and I was like, yeah, that really kind of fit with my mind up when it comes to doing it. Now, one of the things with marriage counseling is that specific techniques for law enforcement. Maybe they work with other people, but as I've said, I work with law enforcement. Some of them are really small. Some of them are bigger in terms of concept. I'm going to start with the concept. And I'm also intending to go in and out of session. And you see me do it. I will do some stuff. You will be my client, and I will be the therapist. Small story, because when I do marriage counseling, now I do not always have the couple together. My preference is to have the couple together for the first session, and then I invariably will see the husband, the wife, and then the couple. Or the wife, the husband, the couple. That doesn't matter. Sometimes I'll see couple, individual. I have not yet found a way to do that without using my judgment at the time. Example, this is a cute little technique, and then we'll get to more meaty stuff. I've had wives ask me, my husband, I asked him to do something, and he says yes, but he doesn't do it. And I said, I got an easy one for you, because your husband's a cop, and I have 2 cops in the room. It's really important to you to go up to him, and you say, you do this. He'll say, yes. You go, that's good. Will you shake my hand? Because I find that when a cop shakes another cop's hand, they don't necessarily break it that much. How are you with handshakes? Do you tend to go back on them much, Dave?
No. My wife's never shook. We've never had to shake on it.
Well,
rather not that get back on
that's okay. But that's an example of the police culture and trying to use that for a marriage. I started out, I have so evolved in how I do marriage counseling that I would suggest that at least the way I view it, I've come up with my own style, my own technique, which I'm going to share. I know that when I got out of graduate school and I was doing counseling, and this whole belief thing came in, and I certainly was very cognitive. I still am, and the beliefs cause feelings. So I realized now I didn't understand something about the cognitive theory about Ellis's work, and that is, I initially decided that marriages would be perfect. This would be my role, but if I could get Mr. Spock to move in with people for brief periods of time, it would solve everything, because his logical Vulcan self would basically point out all of the logical flaws that the couple was making in their thinking and their beliefs, and that would fix everything. You know what I say now when I start marriage counseling, not the first session, to see where I've come from or gone to? I now have 2 postulates that I base all of my marriage counseling on. 1, probably in the world, but certainly in a relationship, there's no such thing as logic. And 2, if you want to be honest and you want to get right down to it, nobody ever makes their point. Those are the 2, because what I find happens is that the logic is the male weapon, and the making her point is the female weapon. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this logical thing, it may be true in certain financial situations with banks, but you ask yourself, what's the most important thing in the world to you? Is it logical things or subjective things? The loving a child, smelling a flower, petting a dog. Where's the logic to that? Where is the logic to that? Now, when I present this to cop couples, it's really neat, because the guy doesn't want to hear this at all, that there's no logic. They basically, that's their control, that's their tool. I am going to basically get my wife to do what I want her to do by giving her the logical reasons. What I found before I started attacking logic and making your point, was that my marriage counseling was going where everybody else's was, and I was mediating fights. I start out letting the couple know that possibly, on rare occasions, I will give my opinion on a fight, but I don't want to mediate fights. One, why yell in my office? You can't yell at home. I also go into some of the research on anger, which is that this venting stuff totally doesn't work. In the research, you just get better at being angry. So I let them know up front I will not mediate fights. And I tell them why. I say, and again, some of it I'm going into, I'm not going to mediate your fights, because if I could mediate a fight successfully, at best, I've given you a fish. Now, what I want to do, what makes me happy, is changing stuff. So what I'd like to try and do is teach you how to fish instead. So that's my, ready? Hook.
Okay.
Now, if you take a look at some of Dr. Gutman's Four Horsemen, as Gary said, and you take a look at trying to do away with logic and not making your point, all of a sudden the harsh arguments, so many of the harsh arguments always start with logic, the reasons for doing stuff. And one of the things that I one of the things I explain is that, you know what the problem with logic is? It's the child's argument. In our culture, the person with the best reason wins the argument. Here's why we should do this, honey. Wow, I don't think so. I do. Here's my logic. And so theoretically what happens is the person whose hand is on top is supposed to win the argument. And I found that gets very insidious, because when a husband does win an argument, or a wife wins an argument, this is more male-oriented, not only does he expect his wife to go along with him, but he also has an expectation, and I will tell this story because I'm in and out. I'm actually changing the tense and person, but this is what I tell my clients. This is what I do in the room. What the husband actually expects is not only will he get compliance, but his wife won't even be disappointed. Won't even be disappointed. The story that goes with that, I say, let's say that your wife comes to you and says, hey honey, I want a Louis Vuitton couch. I've always used that. There is no such thing, but if a Louis Vuitton handbag costs as much as it does, I think a whole goddamn couch. That's got to be grossly expensive. And the husband's, and he's like, you know, honey, first of all, let's go through the logic of this. It's not even real leather. It's vinyl on the outside with those stupid LVs on it. It's usually one color. It's not going to match. It doesn't wear very well. It's all for show. And we won't be able to send our kids to college nor eat if we get one. Now, does that make sense to you, dear? And you know what? It does make sense to her. So she sighs. You know what? I guess you're right. I guess we can't get a Louis Vuitton couch. Okay. Half an hour goes by, comes up, and he goes, what's wrong, dear? He goes, I'm just disappointed that I can't get the couch. And what does the husband say? Didn't I explain to you why we can't get the couch? And that's one of the areas where I'll break into, and I'll say, wait a second. When human beings don't get what they want, they feel disappointment. Reasons may cause them not to try and get what they want, but they're still going to feel disappointment. One of the things I do is, you know, in therapy with cops, honestly, I share some of the stuff. So I'll share with you, because I always share this with the cops and the couples I'm working with. How did I come up with this idea that there is no logic? Well, what really clued me into this, that the husbands will use logic more as a controlling device than they will necessarily believing the logic. They do believe what they say. I came to the conclusion that basically men and women have some similarities. Men kind of want what they want when they want it, but they got to have a good reason. Women get in touch with the feelings, and they're more capable of saying, I want something because it looks good, it feels good, it tastes good, and I like it. So they're very similar in that sense, except the guys have a good reason. So if you don't mind, I'd like to tell you that personal story from my life, how I came to that. I'll use everything that you can to try and come up with these stories. So I spoke to my father on the phone before he passed away. He lived in Florida, Boynton Beach. And we were talking, and we're on the phone. He goes, you know, I'm thinking of getting a new car. And I'm like, Dad, that's great, but didn't you just get a new Buick Aurora? He goes, yeah, I got a new Buick Aurora, but the thing is nickel and diming me to death. Gentlemen, do we want cars that are nickel and diming us to death? That is not a logical thing. Really, it's nickel and diming you to death. Yeah, and you know what? I'm 72 years old. I need something that's reliable. Do our senior citizens need vehicles that are reliable? Yes, they do. Wow, okay, that's pretty interesting. It says, yep, nickel and diming me to death. I need something that's reliable. I want something I can depend on, that I don't have to bring into the service station. I have a limited time to live now. I want to use my life to enjoy myself, not bring a car into a service station. Logical, right? So I said, okay, Dad, what do you think? He goes, well, actually, I'm thinking, well, actually, I kind of already bought it. I really found that reliable car that's not going to nickel and dime me to death, that I can depend on. I did. I said, really, what do you get? He goes, I'm getting a BMW 740i. Swear to God, I'm telling you to people. And I'm like, whoa, Dad, that's, aren't those things running 60? Well, I had these couple of extras in. It's about 65, but that car is not going to break down on me. There's a little weird ending to the story. Sometimes I don't share, so I'll share this with you, which really kind of highlighted. My dad loved that car, okay? That particular first model of BMW 740, I had a flaw. The engines, because they just switched the unleaded gas, they were knocking. So BMW's solution was to send you free for the life of the car cases of this additive, and every time he filled the tank, he'd have to put. Not once did he complain about having to put the additive into the BMW because he loved that car. So, where are we? So that to me, that's where I got that analogy. I'm like, you know what? People really are more subjective than they're willing to admit. And we have to find ways in counseling of getting that logical hammer away from the men so that they're not as controlling. Where I get to at a certain point, after telling the story of the Louis Vuitton couch, after talking about the logic, emphasizing that life is really much more subjective than it is objective, and trying to point out that things that are enjoyable are not necessarily logical. And then, of course, at that point, I go into another story. So, you know, they really aren't. A lot of things that people enjoy, they're not like, you know, actually, I know this group of people, some of them are actually on the job, and they're a weird group of people. They collect round, spherical, heavy objects, this group of people. And they'll polish, and they get little cases for them, and oft times in the week, often on a Wednesday or a Thursday, they will take their heavy, round, cylindrical objects, I guess that's redundant, round and cylindrical, but anyway, and they will go to freestanding buildings meeting other people. They will then take their cylindrical objects and hurl them down planks in order to knock sticks over. And they do this regularly. Where's the logic in that? A lot of guys do that. What am I talking about? Bowling. Bowling. Bowling has never struck me as logical. Many things are not logical, but we enjoy them. We like them. When I can get that across, what have I really done now? I've basically said to a couple, and I'm really truncating this, that if you can get to talk to each other about what you want, what you like, let me tell you the benefit of cutting the logic out, cutting the middleman out. Because a couple will either just beat each other's throats or they'll compromise. The logic adds layers of harsh arguments, criticism, contempt, and defensiveness. That's what the logic adds. It deals directly with Gottman's criteria. Take the logic out, and you take all that crap out, and basically now you can say to the couple, we need to teach you to compromise. And some of the ways of compromising, for instance, teach the concept of the zone of indifference. Guys, if you don't really care, let her have it, okay? If you don't care if the room is blue or pink, why the hell would you argue, okay? If you try to teach that to the wife too. What was that joke? I think my wife said this, or maybe you did. Some marriage counselor like me was up before they said, you know, my wife wanted a Honda Pilot and I really wanted the Ford Expedition. So we really talked, and we really talked about that a lot. And I said, so what color is the Honda Pilot?